what's going on, y'all? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And you're about to watch a little OTB LSU.
We're going to give you all the latest, greatest between LSU football, baseball, women's basketball, softball, and everything in between.
Bottom line, if you want to talk Tigers, keep it locked, subscribe, like it, and we hope you enjoy where I want to start today's show. And that's talking about Maason Smith. And I'm probably going to say a couple of extreme things here during this segment, but just know that I do believe them to be true. The first of them is that I don't think it's an exaggeration. I don't think it's hyperbolic to say that Maason Smith might be the most slept-on defensive lineman in the entire country, right? There's been plenty of headlines about guys like Bear Alexander as they transfer from Georgia to LSU. There's great players throughout the country, but it's weird with Maason Smith because it's not like I'm blaming anybody that he's not talked about. Why would you talk about him? It's just kind of the path, unfortunately, that his career has gone down. Now, he was great as a true freshman in 2021. I kind of forgot how good he was. In just 9 games, he gets 5 TFLs, 4 sacks, 19 tackles, freshman All-American, and he looked dominant in that first series against Florida State last year, and then we all know what happened, right? He tears his ACL, he's sidelined, and because of that, he's kind of forgotten. I mean, even here locally, it's just what happens with injuries. You end up forgetting. Like, I remember that first game. It was devastating. It was like, how are you going to lose the best player on your roster? The season's a disaster. Blah. Like 2 weeks later, you're not thinking about Maason Smith anymore. You think about Mekhi Wingo. You think about all of these other guys. And the entire time, he's having to sit back. And this man who has as much raw physical potential as you will ever see, combined with the work ethic, like he does everything in the lab that he needs to do. This man had to sit back. He had to watch his teammates go on to win these huge games, do these great things. He watched Mekhi Wingo, Harold become an All-American, Harold Perkins become a national superstar, and the entire time, you know he's got to be thinking, that's supposed to be me. And it's not a jealousy standpoint or anything like that. Like, he was a mentor. He supported his team. He was a great teammate, but it's impossible to be that good or have that high of expectations for yourself and not feel like you desperately want where your friends are able to get. I mean, the games are the only fun part of football, and he was denied the only fun part of football. So what you have here, Jake, is a man at 6'6", 310, who is, again, as rawly physically talented as any D lineman I've ever seen. He's got the mental makeup and the work ethic to be great, and now he has an unquenchable motivation that can only be created through extreme disappointment. I mean, Maason Smith is going to take over this fall.
Yeah, and when you couple it with Mekhi Wingo coming back, the guy that you mentioned was an All-American, you're talking about a very disruptive middle portion of the LSU defense. And also, if you go another level behind that, you have Harold Perkins, who now is going to be a stack linebacker. And if you go beside him, you're talking about Omar Spates, who was an All-Pac-12 defender for Oregon State. So you're talking about 4 pillars right there in the middle of the LSU defense. Now, you know, the questions are going to be maybe on the outside as far as edge rusher, who gets after the quarterback, but you're pairing one of, I think, maybe one of the most talented defensive tackles I've seen in recent memory.
Yes.
I mean, in Maason Smith, as far as his size, his speed, his strength, what he can do for you. And then you have a guy in Mekhi Wingo that's just, you know, he's never going to walk in here and impress anybody just by walking in here, but you turn on the tape and you quickly get impressed. And so now he's got a buddy. Now it's a tandem. And so he's not going to get, as you know this better than any of us, he's not going to get double teamed every time. Because if you do that, that's fine, because his partner next to him is going to be an All-American as well. So you're talking about the middle portion of that defense. The foundation is set. Again, we can talk about questions on other parts of it, but you know that right there with those 4 guys, I mean, it's 4 All-American candidates.
Yeah. I mean, wait until they start. I mean, think about the games that you could play rushing Harold Perkins up the middle with those 2. You don't have enough talent on the offensive line to account for those 3. Now, it's an aggressive posture, certainly, and, you know, on the back end, you'll have to hold it down to allow for those games to be played. But it really does start to become very exciting. I mean, I don't think, again, in terms of raw talent, Jake, you have a better national perspective than I do. But I don't think it's crazy, again, to say that Harold Perkins and Maason Smith are as talented as any 2 defensive teammates that you will find anywhere else in the country. I'm not going to say they're the absolute best, because I'm sure there's some combinations out there that I'm missing, but I don't think you're going to find any two that are just rawly more talented than these two are.
No, they'd be in the conversation. They'd certainly be in tier one if we're putting a tier list together of most talented tandems in college football. But like the other portion of it, though, like, yes, I agree with you. Those two talented players. But then you couple that with the other guys we're talking about.
Yeah.
Like Mekhi Wingo is the All-American.
Yep.
Like he is the guy that he proved it last year in what he did. He was the highest rated transfer coming over last year, but for whatever reason we didn't talk about it, probably because he was a defensive tackle, but he showed up last year after high expectations. And then I can't talk enough about Omar Speights and what he's going to be able to do. And I know a lot of LSU fans don't stay up unless you're chasing bets, Ronnie Rance, late at night watching some Pac-12 after dark. But he is a dude.
Yeah.
Like he is somebody that was first team all Pac-12. And when you turn on the tape of Oregon State, he flashes more than anybody. Now you couldn't find it with a search warrant to steal Dev's line there, but the USC Oregon State game, if you find it and you go back and you watch it,
Pac-12 network game.
yeah. He is all over the place against one of the best offenses in the country. So yes, they are a tandem, maybe the most talented that we have in college football. But then you throw those extra pieces that are All-Americans, all Pac-12 with them, that makes them even better.
And you would say, okay, but then what about like the outside, right? Because that's where the questions remain. Who's going to rush the passer from the edge? Who's going to end up winning those starter cornerback battles? And I would say this: the edge remains a bit concerning. Like you've got some young talent there. You've got some experience in Swinson and who else is the upperclassmen got the transfer in? Like
OG from Texas.
Yeah.
Ovia Gofu.
Yeah, Ovia Gofu. Thank you. And then Deshaun Womack, right, is the big is the big 5-star
When
recruit
you still got Quincy Wiggins that nobody's talking about.
Oh, right. Okay.
I mean, no one's talking about him.
No one is talking about Quincy Wiggins.
He's bulked up a little bit. He's kind of playing a lot of that 5 technique.
Okay, yeah.
Kind of like Ali Gay did a year ago. Like B.J. Ojulari was going to be the guy that got after passer. Now, obviously, you're still going to be asked to rush the passer, but he's been playing some of that.
Well, yeah, and you need someone who's going to set the edge against the run there, and so that Wiggins would feel like it because he's always had big size. Here in bulk would be more of that. It's great, but okay. Here's the point. I guess the point is, yes, I'm not going to sit here and say that the edge rushers are going to be a strength of this team. But I also know that they're not like an abject disaster is the point. Like they are fine. They're starting caliber SEC players there. Cornerback is a bit more interesting, Jake, because you can make the argument that although you don't know who's starting, you're more talented at that position than you were last year. When you think about bringing in J.K. Johnson, Deuce Chestnut, we loved how Terrence Welch looked. Obviously, Denver Harris from that A&M class. Like, I don't know who ends up winning those battles. But there's so much good in that room that I actually have a lot of faith in whoever that ends up being.
Yeah, and so anytime you're bringing in a transfer, it's a talented player. It's still there's going to be a transition period. So we'll see, because there was times in the spring where it looked like, okay, I think you've got this figured out. Then there'd be times now going against one of the best receiver rooms in the country that you're like, okay, this room still has a little bit to go, and they need to grow some more. They have the talent in there, but you got to start putting the pieces together. You got to start finding out who can be your guy. Now, we didn't see Deuce Chestnut. Like, that's somebody that I'm excited to see, get my eyes on during training camp. Safety, you feel okay. You have a lot of veteran players back there. I think corner and edge rusher. If you're asking me, okay, what's your biggest question marks for the defense heading in, I think that's where you have to start. And you have candidates in both, which is good. Like, you can throw candidates out there. Guys have done it at other places. Now they got to do it in purple and gold, which doesn't always correlate.
Sure.
Doesn't always happen. Like, you can go be a guy somewhere and then you come somewhere and for whatever reason it doesn't work out here, but you do have candidates. But those are the two places, because other places you feel as strong as anybody in the country. And if you just get good, you don't even necessarily have to get great from those two positions, then you'll be one of the top 25 defenses in the country.
Exactly, right? Like, not every position is going to be Maason Smith and Mekhi Wingo. These are the most talented interior tandem in the country type of hype, and that's okay. If you have that in certain parts of your defense, like Jake said, the other parts just need to be up to snuff. And I firmly believe that this LSU defense will be a complete defense that'll actually surprise some people when you just look at things like returning production. You're like, wow, they kind of lost a lot. They don't have a lot coming back. Well, we'll see.
Zay Alexander from
Yes.
Southeastern is also a name that we need to throw in there because there was something that they saw on tape, identified it, obviously portal, bring him in. So he's another veteran player, played a lot of football that will be in that cornerback conversation. So, like corner, I think you've got the right people. You have to format it. You got to figure out who works well together. You got to figure out, with the safeties, who has kind of the best pairing there as well. Like edge rusher, I still don't feel as good about it. You're going to need somebody step up in training camp. Again, you've got bodies. You've got guys that have done some things in other places. Now you have some freshmen that are incredibly talented. You mentioned Womack, obviously.
Put the Womack.
You got him, and what you said?
No. Get the G team. Sorry.
Then Jackson Howard, also very
Maason
talented,
Smith, member of the G team.
very talented freshman coming in from the state of Minnesota. So you've got some options. You've got some bodies. Some older players that have been other places. Some younger players that you have not really seen yet. That's probably the position though that everyone goes out there during training camp going to pay attention to the closest. But like there's a point of emphasis on that position. Like you have a coach for that position now, right? It's no longer going to be grouped with the linebackers. You brought in, you have somebody you elevated, I should say, that is going to coach that, edge, jackback, or whatever you want to call it.
And LSU has one of those nice setups where if you can win in practice, you should be able to win in a game because you're not going to run into too many tackles the caliber of Emory Jones and Will Campbell there. So good on good. Let's go, boys. Wow, Jake, what incredible takes.
I mean, those guys, they're just the best.
I think so. And if you think so, again, hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications when we post every single day here on OTB LSU.